Alright, what's going on there, guys? So, in this video, we're going to be talking about weapon triggers or any kind of triggers that you want to be able to do for your Dead by Daylight models or whatever other avatars that you're working with. So this includes pulling out weapons and flashing your weapons around, things like that, um, as well as anything that you want the character to basically hold in your hand. We do this through animations, though it's nothing like you're thinking. It's not even really an animation. It's just a certain set of keyframes that basically tell the game to hold that keyframe for an infinite amount of time until you hit another trigger. So what we're working with, if you guys have been following this series of the videos, we're working with the Clown Blight model here. So we already have them rigged up. We've already got them textured in Unity. I'm going to also assume that you have already gotten his weapon already textured and rigged up. It's no different than from the avatar model. So you just basically want to create, at least for me, I like to create a weapons folder within a Dead by Daylight folder, and then have a folder to their corresponding characters. So like it'll be Doctor Weapons, Freddy Weapons, or Hillbilly Weapons. You get the idea. So here we'll have Clown Weapons, and then whatever cosmetic that character is. So here we have the regular Clown folder. We have Clown, Carny Claws, so any kind of cosmetic that we're dealing with and their corresponding weapon that comes with that cosmetic. So in this case, we're doing Seething Entertainer, so we go in here, I put the model here, it creates a materials folder, and here is the material for it, and then I just basically drag and drop the texture onto the material, and then I just drag the weapon into our scene window over here. So, okay, so how does this work? It's fairly simple. It's a little tedious. So I'll show you right now how to do it the long way, and then I'm also going to show you how to do it the short way once you've figured out how to do it at least the first time. So, okay. To do this, basically what you'd want to do is just Control D on the keyboard to copy this avatar here. Actually, sorry, before we do that, go ahead and delete that. Actually, before we do that, we're going to want to make sure that the weapon is somewhat fairly in his hand. It doesn't have to be too accurate, but accurate enough to that it'll make it easier on us in the future when we go to do the keyframes here. So we're going to go and find our right shoulder here, right arm. So just go into the armature and just find this right elbow here, right wrist, and then we're just going to drag and drop it into the right wrist here. Depending on how you rig up your avatars, if you're not using cats, the naming for the armature is going to be completely different, but because I use cats to rename all my armature, it's going to be as such. Okay, so now we're just basically going to rotate this knife here to about a 90-degree angle, I believe. I could be wrong. I'm really bad with my angles here. However, this isn't completely accurate because this knife isn't quite straight at the same time when I had to rig it up. So it's going to be a little difficult. As you see, it's kind of got a bend here, so we got to kind of play with it a bit. I'd say that's probably good enough, honestly. Okay, and now we're going to bring that up to his hand here. Just raise it up, bring it over here a little bit. And adjust. Yeah, look like he about hold it like that, maybe. And then we're going to turn it a little bit. Okay, bring it around here. Bring it back. Probably around there, maybe. So that's probably fairly good enough. Actually, you know what? Just so I'm a little bit more happier with it. You don't have to get too anal with it, but at least just somewhat good enough. Okay, so that's probably fine right there. Okay, so now that you have it inside his armature in his wrist, because that's basically tied to that bone now is his wrist, so anytime you move the hand, the knife will move with his hand. Otherwise, if you don't tie it with the armature, you're going to have an issue where it's not going to move with the wrist. So now what we do is we hit Control D on the keyboard, which duplicates everything on that avatar there. And usually what I like to do is I like to rename this and call it by the weapon name. So in this case, the weapon name is called Mr. Hollows, and then I hit Trigger, or Type Trigger. And if you have anything in here, like I have an avatar descriptor in here, I usually like to just remove it because I'm actually not using that, only on this one right here. It's not a necessary step, but I just like to keep things tidy and organized. If there's unnecessary components, I like to delete them because that's not what they're going to be used for. They're going to be used on this one instead. So now what we're going to do is on the clown seething entertainer duplicate here for the top, we're just going to go ahead and hit hide on this. So the top one, we're going to hit hide so that we can see just this one that we're working with, which is the Mr. Hollows trigger. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go under animation, create, and make sure that we're in our weapons, clown weapons, okay, clown seething entertainer, where you look good. So now we're just going to call this same thing, Mr. Hollows trigger. Hit save. Okay, so this gets to be the fun part. This becomes very, 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 very tedious. But I'm going to show you the short method of doing this. That's going to be a little bit long at first. So basically what we have to do is we have to add all the individual finger bones, animator finger bones that is, for the clown's hand here. So we would go under animator, and then what we're going to look for is the right hand. So it should be right here. So we want to start with the index stretch, index 2 stretch, index 3 stretch, all the way down until you don't see any more right hand animator bones here. So we're just going to be working with this set. So make sure that you basically hit positive on all these. I haven't found a quicker way of doing this other than the short method that I'm about to show you. When you first do this, it's going to be a little tedious. So I'm going to show you throughout the whole video just to get an idea of what it is that I'm doing though. So don't do the left hand one because we're not working with the left hand. We just want to do the right hand one. So just keep going into animator here. So just keep grabbing every single one of these. So as you can see, this gets tedious because you have to keep clicking down, you got to keep finding it, and yeah, this becomes a nightmare. But once you've done this one time, it becomes a hell of a lot easier the next time when I'm about to show you the next time around here. I'm just showing you the long method because you guys have probably never done this before. So at least you have a template to work off of the next time. So, okay. And you know, just so this isn't getting that long, let's just say you have the last one here, which the last one that you're going to be adding is right hand thumb spread. So you're going to start from right hand index 1 stretched all the way down to right hand thumb spread. Let me show you an easier way of doing this though. So let's just go ahead and delete these keyframes here. So I have an easier way of doing this. So say you did this at least your first time. You did all this painstakingly the hard way, right? Okay. Now say you want to create another avatar, but you want to just copy those keyframes from your previous avatar and just carry them over. You can literally copy and paste them over. So how I'm going to do that is I already have a clown scene already done because I've made clown models in the past. So if I go over to my scenes here, sorry, wrong one, scenes, there we go, and I go under clown, let's see, clown, oh, I don't know, we'll do street performer, why not? So here's my street performer model that I did a while back, and if I go under Uncle Carvey trigger, which is basically the cosmetic knife name for his weapon, and then I go under animation here, you will see that I already have all of these right hand keyframes already in here, and all I have to do is just click on this little gray spot right here and it selects every single one of these. Now if I click shift click on this one and then shift click on that one, it selects every single one there, and if I hit Control C on the keyboard and then we go back over to our Mr. Hollows animation here, go back to animation down here, and then we just hit Control V on the keyboard, look at that, it automatically copied all those little right hand keyframes there for me. The only thing it's also going to copy is the Uncle Carvey game object, which is missing. You can just go ahead and delete that, you don't necessarily need that. That's just left over from the other one that I grabbed. So this is what it'll look like when you've manually painstakingly done it though. So yeah, then we don't no longer need this. We can just hit remove scene. And then the last thing you want to be sure to add, go into add property, and this is where we're going to set the knife as a trigger. So any anytime that you click on this trigger, it'll automatically show the knife as well. Because what we're going to do is we're actually going to hide it on our model through this one. You'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. So just make sure you go into clown, see the entertainer, hips, spine, chest, upper chest, right shoulder, right arm, right elbow, right wrist, and then go to Mr. Hollows, or whatever it is you're trying to make as a trigger, then hit as is active. Okay. Okay, so now if we switch to these keyframes, you'll see that he kind of ducks down. This is completely normal. Don't worry about it. So basically, how does this work? See, as you can see, I already have, even it sets the positions of the fingers too for me automatically when I take the animated ones from the old I forget what the street performer clown model. It automatically copied those values for me too, so I can literally just set the knife in the correct spot. That's all I really have to do, and that's why I love doing it this way rather than painstakingly do it, because then you have to set the values, the finger values to whatever positions you're trying to do them, and it just becomes a nightmare at that point. But for your first time, you are going to have to do that. So basically, if we go under the animator right hand index 1 stretched. So this is the stretched one. So what this is how far your finger will go out that way or go that way. It's not going to go like up or down. It's just how far it is going this way. You can make this really look disgusting if you don't want your values, so you got to be really careful. So for instance, if we okay, no, wait, I'm actually wrong. I'm sorry. So actually, it's the spread. The spread is the one I'm talking about. That will make it go either towards you or towards me. So like for instance, if you see the index finger here, and I mess with this 0 value, you'll see that I can literally make this finger bend, like go inside out of itself. So yeah, you gotta be really careful with your values. For right now, though, I'm just gonna leave that as is. But yeah, so. Index 3 will be this little upper part of your finger. Index 2 is usually the middle part of your finger. And then index 1 is going to be your knuckle right here. So your knuckle, your second joint here, and then your third joint. You'll see what I'm talking about when I start moving these values here. So that's going to be your knuckle joint that moves that one. And then this is going to be your secondary joint right here. And then your third joint right here. So I'm just going to set those back to default values. So yeah, you just basically got to play around with these values to get it into a kind of like a clasp sort of position. Takes a little fiddling and finessing, but eventually you figure it out. It doesn't have to be quite perfect because nobody's really looking at your hand. I'm kind of anal with it, so I kind of make it so it looks like he's kind of holding it just right. I even try to get the weapon in the correct position as much as possible. He actually kind of holds his knife with his finger, his thumb against the back of the handle, if you ever seen him hold it in game. So I usually don't have it like this. I usually have it kind of like up against the knife. You'll see what I'm talking about once I move the weapon here. So let's see. So in our Mr. Hollis trigger, as you can see, the knife isn't actually positioned in his hand very well. That's why I was saying to you guys, try to position it as well as you can in this one right here, the one that we hid, because we're then going to try to finesse it or make it more perfect or refined in the secondary trigger here. So let's go over to spine, chest, upper chest, right shoulder, right arm, and we're going to find that Mr. Hollow's knife. Okay, and there it is. And now we're going to try our very best here to kind of get it in his hand better. Okay. As you can see, I'm really bad at my camera angles here. I'm not really the best when it comes to VRChat. Well, Unity in general, I'm a little bit more better at Blender. Okay. See if we can try to turn that a little bit better. So yeah, it's going to be a bunch of turning it, twisting it. I could have probably set the origin a little bit better on this knife. It would have been a lot easier to play with, but make do with what you got, right? Could also mess with the positions right here as well, but that's just a little too sensitive, so it's really hard to do it that way. Okay, now it's kind of starting to go into his hand. We don't want that either. That's kind of a little bit better. I'd say that's about near perfect. Yeah, I really like that. I could probably move the thumb a little bit more. I don't know if it's spread, maybe? I don't know why it's not working, actually. It's probably because I gotta set the keyframes again. Sometimes it bugs out and you have to kind of move the keyframes to get it to work. Yeah, see? Now it's starting to work. Anytime that you see that the fingers aren't actually moving as you're moving the positions, just just drag this keyframe at the top by holding left click and just kind of move in between them and then go back to 0 and it should set itself again. So I may actually have to delete these keyframes on 0.001 because well, one, I'm going to have to anyways to show you that you're going to have to add those later, but anytime that I'm messing with these values on these sets of keyframes here, they have to be copied over to 0.01. Otherwise, you're going to have some real weird funkadoodle animations going on. So just keep that in mind. What I'm trying to do is trying to rest it up against the knife a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay. Now, okay, so I know I did it the quick method. I wanted to show you guys that so that in the future when you're making your avatars, it's a lot easier for you to just copy the keyframes off another avatar and then just place them in there. Now, for you guys doing it manually for your first time, you're actually not going to have that second set of keyframes right here. What you're going to want to do is just click on the gray part right here, this first keyframe at the top right here, and it'll select everything here. This is when you're set and done with your animation for pulling out the knife. You're going to click here, hit Control C, and then hit Control V on the keyboard, and then it'll copy those keyframes at 001. You don't want to put it as 002, and you don't want to put it as 003. You want to put it at 001 because this is literally within a split second. It's going to keep going back and forth between these keyframes over and over and over and over again. You'll see what I'm talking about. See how it's flipping out because it's literally within like half a second. It is literally just going like that. This is so that way that the trigger is always going to have that knife being held out, because what this is basically doing is it's an animation that's going to constantly keep that knife in your hand until you hit another trigger on your pad on your VR controllers. So that's why we put that set of keyframes there to keep it from disappearing after you hit the trigger. So now that that's out of the way, what you want to do then, because now we're done animating, we don't need to animate anymore. We made sure that we have our hollows game object is active and we have our keyframes. So now we're just going to hit Mr. Hollows and go to the top here, and you see the transform little component tab up here. Hit this little cog that's right next to the little question mark book. Hit the cog and hit copy component. So what that's going to do is it's going to copy all these values right here. And then we're going to close this down here. We're going to hide this one now. And then we're going to enable this one again. And see his little knife right here? We're going to make sure that that's in the correct position as we copied the values from Mr. Hollow's trigger. And paste values. And that now sets it in a relatively better position than it was. Okay, and we're also going to hide Mr. Hollows on our main clown seething entertainer avatar model here. So the reason why we do that is because when we launch into the game, we don't want that knife showing just yet. When we actually hit the trigger, that's when the knife is going to pop up. Let's see. I have a bottle that actually goes with him too, because as you know, he has a power where he throws bottles and things like that. It's basically the same thing. If you wanted to, if the killers have additional things that they use or something like that, like his little toxic bottle, it's no different than the Mr. Hollow's trigger. You would basically call it, I think it's called the Afterpiece Tonic, is his little power bottle thing. You would just basically do the same thing. You would basically grab the bottle, put it into your main avatar here, and put it into the left, because I think he uses his left hand to throw the bottles. You would just put it in the left shoulder this time around, into the left wrist, same thing, And then when you have it there, set it in a relatively in a decent position in his left hand, and then you would just hit Control D on the keyboard, and then call it afterpiece tonic trigger, and then you know the rest from there. You just create an animation for it so that he's holding it in his hand, and that's pretty much that. Very, very simple to do. I'm going to do that on my own time because I don't want this video to get too lengthy. I just want to show you how to do just a simple weapon trigger. So yeah, now the next thing that we have to do here is we have to find a override. So type in anywhere in Unity custom. Usually if you just type custom, it usually pops up. So this is the one that we want, the custom override empty here. We're going to hit Control D on the keyboard, and that will duplicate it and call it custom override empty 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag and drop that into our clown seething entertainer, or seething entertainer folder. So I have it right here now in the seething clown entertaining weapon folder. And usually what I like to call this, so I usually like to call it just by the name, and then I call it weapon override. There we go. And then what we're going to do then is, as you can see, the animation is also in that folder. We're going to drag and drop the animation, and I usually like to keep weapon or any type of triggers on these two specific triggers on your VR controllers, which is the handgun for VRChat, which is this one, and then the rock and roll as like a secondary trigger for like the afterpiece tonic or something like that. So you'll have the afterpiece tonic animation and the little controller here, and yeah, you would just basically drag the afterpiece animation into the rock and roll, and then boom, bada bing, you're pretty much done there. Now our last final part, now all we have to do is just tie this controller here, or this override here, avatar animation override, and we're going to click on Clown Seething Entertainer, and we're going to drag and drop this onto our custom standing animation, and we're also going to drag and drop this on our custom sitting animation. That is for the avatar descriptor component that we did when we first rigged up the avatar in Unity. I had to have you guys make a VRC avatar descriptor, so you'll see that in this component window right here. And that's pretty much it, guys. You're pretty much done. All you have to do is just submit a new update by going over to VRChat and then going into the builder and then submitting an update for the avatar, and that's pretty much it. And then when you get into game, just whatever trigger you put it on the override is where it's going to hit on your control pads. So if you put it as the rock and roll pad, then you would place your finger in the rock and roll pad spot on the controller pad, and then that will pull out the weapon for you. You want to place your finger there though. If you take your finger off that part of the pad, at least this is how it is with my controllers, then the animation goes away, and that's how these work. So you have to keep your finger there at all times to basically have it always be doing that. So yeah, guys, in the next video, I'm basically going to show you guys how to do cloth dynamics. That means how am I going to get these little pieces on his cloth to move properly, and then as well as dynamic bones to get like his hair moving and things like that. For dynamic bones, you guys will have to pay $20 for it in the asset store, which is located right here. It's a very nice little component tool. Looks like if you have Plus or Pro, it's $16, but yeah, it's just very useful on avatars. It allows little things on like his belt to move, like his little finger ring here, hair, anything like that. It's almost like a requirement, I would say, when it comes to rigging up these kind of avatars to make them more lifelike. So yeah, in the next video, I will show you guys how to do that, and hopefully this was very informative. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I will get to them as much as possible, or quick as possible. Peace out, guys.